Hello, 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 hello. I'm just putting the live stream into the chat. So if you come on and I'm not quite there, it's just because I'm popping it into Teams for you. Hello, hello, hello. I do apologise for the lack of live lesson on Wednesday, but you actually got me. Oh, morning, Shan. It went really well. I had a grand total of 4 children. And I had 3 yesterday. So it was great. But I've had some big news over the last 24 hours is that I'm going to Qatar 9 days earlier than I expected. So, been a bit mental, but it's all good. So I'm sorry you didn't get me live on Wednesday, I should say. However, you've got me live today without the makeup, without the hair done, in my usual grubby self. Woo! So just while people are just coming on, I wanted to let you know that I'll do a live lesson next Wednesday as per usual. I might do it a little bit earlier because I'm going to drive down to... No, I'll do it in normal time. Scratch that. I'll do a lesson for you on Wednesday. And then on Friday, we are meant to have a lesson, but because it's week... And because it's week B this week and week A next week, obviously it'll be early in the morning. I would have you normally would be first lesson. I'm not doing a lesson on Friday. Absolutely not. 1, too emotional. 2, it's your last day. 3, too emotional. So on Friday next week, so a week today, I'm going to go live on Teams and you guys can join in and we can just kind of hang out together and just have a bit of a chat and a goodbye and I'll cry. I'll just do a bit of a quiz with you rather than a lesson because I think that'll be much nicer. So yeah, next week we will have, instead of a live lesson like this, I'll be on Teams. You can pop your cameras on or whatever, and it'll be kind of our last lesson together. Hi, Sam. Also, as a heads up, I know I said I'd be home for Christmas. If there's not a vaccine for COVID, I won't be. I won't be allowed. I promise I'll visit. I have 10 weeks off in the summer, 10 whole weeks. So my plan is that I'll be able to come home and I'll have to quarantine, I think, potentially for 2 weeks. And then I will come and see you guys before the end of term for Redfest. Whether I'm able to come home for Christmas, I'm not sure yet because of quarantining rules, but I definitely will come and see you. I don't know who your new teacher is for certain, but I think it potentially could be Mrs. Goy. Don't quote me on that. But I think if I look on my phone, it could be Mrs. Goy. Let's look. Yeah, I think you've got Mrs. Goy from what I can look at. That may change. You do have an email coming from Mr. Martin at some point with what's going to be going on in September. So I'll visit. It will be fine. And I will make sure I put on... I'm going to regularly upload on YouTube is my plan because I have 2 weeks of quarantine in Qatar where I'm literally not allowed outside my hotel room. So I'm going to make some top tip videos. And yeah, I've also made a Miss Martin TikTok to try and help with some exam stuff and that. And I'll pop my email. So if you want to email me and ask for any help, I will also help that way. Right, should we get on to the Cuban Missile Crisis? Now I've been babbling for 4 minutes and 40 seconds. So I made sure on Wednesday, yeah, you can follow me if you want, Shan. I've only got a week left, so I'll start following everybody back on TikTok. I love TikTok a bit too much. So let's look at the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, on Wednesday, you looked at the consequences of the Bay of Pigs. I went over that in my hideous email. I came up on your For You page. Yes! Which one, Grace? Which one? I must say, I've been learning TikTok dances. That was a bad version, but so, oh yay! For You page, yes. And I will have a teacher version, not just a random version, of the dance with my sister. Do you know how long that took us to do? Too long than I care to admit. Sam, get TikTok. It needs to be done. It will change your life. I didn't think I was cool enough for TikTok. I'm still definitely not cool enough for TikTok, but I love it. So I will be putting more TikToks out next week in terms of my new account, because I've got some things I'm going to do around the school while I'm in there and being naughty. And sorry, Mr. Martin, if you're watching this. Yeah. Right, let's get to something that's not as interesting as TikTok. Well, it is. Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, the document that I've set you for today kind of encompasses itself. So I'm just going to tell you the story of what happened. And hopefully then it'll answer any questions that are on your document that I've set you. I have got the document up in front of me so that I don't steer too far away from it. Yeah, let's go. Go. Sorry. So the first question that you've got on there is to do with a map. I can't really do anything with that because that's about you looking at the map and zooming in. But we will start then with, we have just had the Bay of Pigs invasion. It went terribly wrong if you are an American, and Cuba and Khrushchev are like besties. They are best friends. They're loving life. And Khrushchev's like, so bestie, I know I'm buying you sugar, and I know I've got diplomats there, and I know I've now got like some bases there, but how do you feel about some missiles? Like some medium range missiles that I can potentially bomb America from? And Castro's like, all right, no problem at all, mate. That's not a problem at all. So when Kennedy learns of the missiles, as you can imagine, he's not happy at all. He's like, oh, okay. And there are certain decisions that he can take. I will put things up on the board in just a minute. So him and his advisors, which include his brother Robert Kennedy, he can bomb Cuba and the Soviets with nuclear missiles and start a nuclear war. He can invade Cuba, because that went so well last time. He can use an airstrike and destroy the missile bases. He can blockade Cuba, or he can do absolutely nothing. And each scenario had pros and cons. They had two different teams, like one for peace, one for war. And he set up his cabinet to advise him on what they thought the best move was. Not yes men like Donald Trump's got. So Kennedy goes through the different options. Bombing Cuba, not great. Going to start a nuclear war, probably not the best option. So that's ruled out. Invading Cuba, like I said, went well really last time. They absolutely humiliated. So we're not going to do that. That looks like an act of war. Use an airstrike to destroy the missile bases. Not going to do that. Again, act of war. The Soviets could then retaliate with nuclear war. They're going to ignite that. Do nothing and have that potential of nuclear missiles destroying all of America 145 kilometers away from you. That's not an option either. So they go for something called a blockade. So this is our second blockade in this course. And I'm going to stand up and just move. So they decide they are going to put a quarantine around Cuba. Now, the way that they phrase it is a quarantine so that it doesn't look so bad. Because actually, what this quarantine is, I know I've spelled it wrong. I'm quite aware I've spelled it wrong. Sorry, guys. Is that it's technically an act of war. Because it's a quarantine. You'd think by the time we've been in quarantine, I'd have spelled it correctly. And this was to prevent, here we go, how many coming over? It was to prevent Soviet ships from bringing missiles in. And it was actually 3,300 kilometers wide, I suppose, or around Cuba, okay? So a lot of submarines were ready. It was, you know, pretty hardcore. And on the 22nd of October, 1962, JFK addresses the nation. So a bit like what we've had with our press conferences, he does a press conference, and that was very high tech back then. All right. So he speaks on television, and he says that the US Army are ready, they're armed, and they can go into action if they need to. He informs Khrushchev that the Soviet convoy of ships with the missiles approaching Cuba would be stopped, and any of those ships that had offensive military equipment on there would not be permitted to pass the blockade, and they would have to return to the Soviet Union. Now, this is starting to build tension massively. And actually, Khrushchev's response to this, I'm going to call him K for now, because who's got time to write Khrushchev? Despite Kennedy's best efforts to say, oh, this is legal, it's totally fine, everything's okay, you don't really need to say that it's an act of war. Khrushchev's like, dude, this is an act of war. Bro, come on. And Soviet ships are already on their way to Cuba, okay? They are hurtling towards Cuba. And on the 24th of October, 18 Soviet ships that were heading to Cuba actually turn around so that they avoid confrontation at this quarantine. And Kennedy is demanding all missiles be removed or he's going to invade. I'm going to pop that on the board for you. I'm going to try and put the responses in pink. So now we are at a real flashpoint. Kennedy says, if you don't remove the missiles, I'll invade Cuba. And Khrushchev has already promised that he's going to protect Cuba at this point. So then gets to the 26th of October. So bearing in mind now, I don't know if anybody's ever watched anything Call the Midwife. I've watched an awful lot of it over quarantine. And actually there was an episode all about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Everybody in the world was on tenterhooks when this was going on. So JFK has basically declared war. Khrushchev's got ships hurtling towards him. They turn around. He says he's going to invade Cuba and things start to escalate. So Khrushchev sends Kennedy a letter. All right. Now, in this letter, it says, if you remove the blockade, if you get rid of that, and you promise not to invade Cuba, I'll take my missiles out. So far, that seems like quite a reasonable thing. Actually, JFK is getting quite a lot of bang for his buck here. He's getting quite a lot of maneuverable, a lot of, he's gaining more than he's giving away. That's what I'm trying to get at. And bizarrely, they received this letter from Khrushchev, and before they even had a chance to ponder it, on the 27th of October, Khrushchev sends a second letter. And it says exactly the same as the first one: remove the blockade and don't invade Cuba, and I will remove the missiles. But also, it's Turkey missiles need to be removed for the Cuban missiles. So America have got to remove their Turkey have got to have their missiles removed because they're pointed directly at the Soviet Union, and that will then allow the Cuban missiles to go. Bearing in mind that a U-2 spy plane has been shot down over Cuba by a Soviet missile, so the crisis is now deepening. Things are getting hotter and hotter. Now, I know that so far we have only looked at kind of 5 days here, but this crisis did last for 13 days from that initial putting the quarantine in place up to. So this initial thing here is before the address. So the quarantine going into place, the missile crisis ending is actually 13 days. It's a great film if you ever get the chance to see it. Here we go. Here is the ending of it all, almost. Now, Bobby Kennedy, he was also a candidate for the president after his brother dies. Spoiler alert, if you didn't know, JFK got shot in the head. And he says to him, look, bro, we've got 2 letters here. What I think you should do is we received the first letter on the 26th of October. That was 2 days ago. That's, really enough time to have responded to that. I know we received a second letter, but if we respond to that second letter rather than the first, we look weaker. And we need to gain some respectability back. We need to save face here, and we need to look like we have been the stronger superpower out of the 2. Because we had to back down with the Bay of Pigs, and we've been made to look stupid there. Let's make us look strong here. So they decide that they would respond publicly to that first letter and say, yep, we'll take our blockade down if you we'll take our blockade down and we won't invade Cuba if you can remove your missiles. They then privately respond to letter 2 saying, yeah, we'll take our missiles out of Turkey, but that's never released. And Khrushchev is given till the 29th of October to respond to this particular letter. Khrushchev accepts the offer, but it's not made public, okay, in terms of he accepts the offer in terms of the second letter. So that means that the crisis by the 29th of October is over. In 13 days, the world has come really close to the end of the world, effectively. I will put a little TED Talk video into Teams after this because it's fantastic. It amps up the tension and it shows you how close the world came to it. And actually there was a couple of instances where it wasn't just on the political front, it was on the like literally on the ground with commanders that that they nearly messed things up effectively. Excuse me, my stomach is growling. So I will put that on there for you. Now, I'm just double checking that is where I need to leave it because of your lesson on Wednesday. Look around, look around. The revolution's happening right now. I've been watching Hamilton. Please excuse me. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there. So on Wednesday, we're looking at the consequences. So have a go at looking at the Word document that I've set. There's a link to the BBC bite size page because that's really good. And also, I might have put the TED Talk video on there. Discover Audible with an audiobook on us. I did! Yay! So it's an animation of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Hey, Uncle Joe, you're a bit late. Oh, well, to be fair, you are dead. So yeah, so that's the Cuban Missile Crisis. It is the closest the world has ever come to nuclear war, and it is 13 days of complete panic. It's on the Kennedys as well, a mini series that's brilliant. And it's hard to imagine now how close we came. So have a go at the Word document. I'm here all day if you need anything. I do have a lesson at 12 but if you need me, give me a shout. Otherwise, see you on Wednesdays, you cool cats and kittens. Carol Baskin. See you later. Bye.